Alright, so let's take a look at Navi versus Team Liquid in the raid called Dota 2 League, run by the Evil Geniuses organization and primarily commented on by AC and Draskell, although I think for this game it's just going to be AC, that's what I heard anyway in the stream chat for them. So this should be an interesting game. It's going to be pretty hotly anticipated. I think probably a ton of people are going to be watching on the primary stream over at One More Game TV 2. And the reason is that these are two very, very popular teams, right? I don't know how competitive the game's actually going to be. It should be really, really interesting to see, actually, because Team Liquid is a very, very new team, relative to the entire organization being put together. They're actually, the core of the team are a bunch of players that actually played on the old Complexity team. So Fluff and Stuff, IX Mike, Korok, but they've sort of added on these additional members, and so far they've been inconsistent. So they've had high highs and low lows, which is always an interesting recipe for sort of a fan favorite team, right? Because you always want to watch a team who's sort of unpredictable and you don't really know what'll happen, even if that does mean that maybe they lose a little more than you might want. So they're still, I think, working the kinks out, and they've definitely lost some games that maybe people felt that they should have won just based on the pure skill level of the players involved. But they've also won some great games, and so this is going to be a real test for them, because on a big stage, a lot of people are going to be watching this series. This is going to be a best-of-3 series against really the best team in Europe. Widely regarded as probably the best team in Western Dota, so non-Chinese, non-Asian teams. Navi, maybe Navi or Empire, but those are the two teams that you immediately jump to as the two strongest teams. And so Navi, Russian, Ukrainian, and Estonian captain Puppy against Liquid, which is primarily American from the US, and then I think they have one Canadian player. I think TC is Canadian. One or two of their players are Canadian, but primarily a North American team. And so it's going to be really interesting just to see actually how it works out, what TL's plan is. Bulba, I know, is a player that researches a ton of opponents' teams and what their compositions are, and sort of really acts as the student of the game. And Fluff and Stuff as well is a very unpredictable captain drafter in the sense that he'll pick heroes that maybe aren't that common in the metagame. His Visage is of course legendary, and a lot of people sort of directly try to counterpick it or ban it out or figure out ways to deal with it. And there are other heroes that he also sort of favors that maybe other captains won't. But that's also true of Puppy. I mean, Puppy and Fluff and Stuff are both unusual drafters. They're more dynamic. They don't really just rely on one or two particular compositions. And so it'll be exciting to see, both from a drafting perspective, will something new come out of this series, or will they try something unusual? And sort of additionally from a play series, will Liquid be able to sort of cohere into a team unit enough to sort of beat Navi at their own game? Because that's one of the strengths of Navi, this very stable roster, these very high talent players that all work well together, is that they just work as a team so very, very well. And they cohere and gel into just, they can turn situations from sort of behind into vastly ahead, sort of where a lesser team might fold in a team fight that seems like it's not favorable or seems like it might go poorly. Navi can just turn that right around and turn it into just something that looks spectacular. So we've already got some bans coming out, and 4 very standard bans: Darkseer, Undying, Batrider, Nyx Assassin. We actually don't see Darkseer getting banned out in this first phase quite as much recently, but Navi apparently still sort of doesn't want to see him enough that they take him out nice and early. Take out that Undying, the Batrider, the Nyx, all these sort of ganky heroes generating teamfight advantage. Navi's bans are a little more teamfight oriented. They don't really want these 5-on-5 monsters, and especially this early game monsters in the form of Undying. And Liquid more of that, take out the mid, take out the Batrider, take out the Nyx Assassin for that ganky support. And so 3 additional heroes that are very strong. We actually haven't been seeing Lone Druid quite as much maybe this week as we did in previous weeks, but Navi is one of the teams that favors Lone Druid more relative to the average. They like to put Host, who's playing under the name Sobachka, which is dog, which is puppy. So he's playing on, which is a joke about puppy. So he's playing under the name Sobachka, and he's they usually put him on Lone Druid, and he sort of does the safe lane farming. But actually, in this time, they're going to use somebody else on Lone Druid, because Navi has opted to go with Phantom Lancer and Wisp. So already a very non-standard draft going on here. TL picks up Keeper of the Light and Lifestealer for their carry. Shadow Demon, another support. These are 2 very strong supports who are able to really threaten in a tri-lane. Shadow Demon can immobilize you and cause you to take more damage, and Keeper of the Light has huge base damage and additionally a lot of other good effects. So one option would have been to run 2 carries with the Lifestealer and the Phantom Lancer, so Navi takes that away from them. Phantom Lancer combos really, really well with Keeper of the Light, so Navi prevents that by picking up the Phantom Lancer. And the other thing they do is they take this Wisp, another very strong hero that Puppy hates to play against, so he usually either bans him or drafts him himself. And now we get to the point at which Navi sort of takes out the second carry option for TL in the form of Luna. They take out the Magnus, who actually slipped through this entire draft phase without getting picked up, but he definitely won't actually make it into this game. He's going to be taken out in the second ban phase. And Liquid, meanwhile, is going to start taking out Dendy's heroes. None of these heroes are really heroes that you'll see Dendy on, so they take out the Queen of Pain, they take out the Rubik, who's usually played as a support, but we did see Dendy play him solo mid in the International 2. And so they're sort of just taking out these sort of finesse heroes that Dendy's very good with to try to avoid Navi being able to round out their composition, because this is a very, very strong mid to late game pushing lineup. Like, the Phantom Lancer is very, very good at pushing because his primary mechanic is that he generates all these illusions via all of his abilities, really. And then Lone Druid is very strong at pushing. As soon as that bear gets up to level, he maxes out his bear ranking and gets that demolish ability, and he has the ultimate true form to cause him and his bear to deal more damage with its sub abilities. At that point, Lone Druid becomes a very formidable pusher, and this is just a very strong pushing composition with this additional wildcard ganking element from the Wisp. So one thing that they could do would be the Lone Druid can be played as a side lane solo. They could do something like put Light of Heaven, their side lane solo player, on him, put him top, then put the Phantom Lancer as even. They could even do something like a solo safe lane, and then have or a dual lane with another support, and then have Wisp and, say, Chaos Knight run the middle and put Dendy on Chaos Knight. I don't usually see Dendy on Chaos Knight, but it's certainly possible that they would do that. They take out the Gyrocopter, so they don't really want to see... Gyrocopter is pretty strong against Phantom Lancer, just in the sense that even if you have a ton of illusions up as a result of using all of your abilities, Phantom Lancer's strength really is in the fact that he puts out all those illusions. And so Gyrocopter, with his infinitely scaling flak cannon that does AoE damage in a 1,000-year radius, for sort of the same reason that Gyrocopter is strong against Undying, you could put him against Phantom Lancer and blow up all those illusions extremely quickly with your flak cannon. So maybe Navi doesn't want to see that, and that's why they sort of take out the Gyrocopter. We haven't seen Gyrocopter quite as much lately. He had a brief faddish period, and then he sort of fell off the face of the earth, but still sort of a strong fringe pick. There are a lot of heroes in the current metagame that aren't picked all the time, but they're really strong spoiler picks, so you can put them out once every so often, and they just have a huge effect. Liquid, meanwhile, continues with their Dendy targeted banning. They ban out the Puck, so this is another hero that you would see Dendy on. The Dendy hero remaining is Pudge, so he could still take that, but it might be a little bit overboard on just the pure amount of melee that they would have at that point, but still certainly an option. So I'm going to be interested in seeing what these last 4 picks are going to be huge. The 5th pick for any team is sort of the spoiler pick, in the sense that if you have like a pocket hero that the other team isn't expecting, that you think completely counters either their team or their hero composition or what have you, you save it for the 5th pick, because that gives the least amount of time for the other team to actually counteract it. So especially on Dire, the 5th pick, Radiant just has no way to counteract that at all. So now it picks up Brewmaster, so they will pick up a third melee hero. This is going to probably be Dendy, and he's probably going to go up in the mid. I don't know if they're actually going to go dual mid with a support like the Wisp in the middle, or if they'll just run solo mid Brewmaster. But definitely a bold choice to put him here. The fact that Liquid took out all these mid options means that they are also constrained in who they can actually put in the middle, so that's quite interesting. And so, I mean, yeah, you don't have Darkseer, you don't have Magnus, you don't have Queen of Pain. These are really the three of the strongest mids available right now. Sorry, and Batrider, of course. I meant Batrider, and I just forgot to even mention him, just because he's so very, very strong. But you never see him make it out of the first ban phase, and when you do that, the team that gets him generally wins. So, definitely, this Brewmaster is a statement of intent from Navi that they want to have that even more mid-game dominance. Dendy's quite strong in the Brewmaster. If he's able to get levels early and develop a little bit, and he's able to use this Primal Split to win team fights, it's going to be pretty difficult for TL to deal with. The nice thing is that the Lifestealer does have this 6-second at max rank Rage to make himself magic immune, because a carry without this passive magic immunity ability would be very, very weak to the Brewmaster's various disables, like his Drunken Haze to make you miss a lot, his Thunderclap to slow you, and the 2 disables that Primal Split gives in the form of the long duration Cyclone on the Air Spirit and the on the Storm Spirit, sorry, and no, I should say the Air Spirit, and the stun on the Earth Spirit. So I think TL actually weren't prepared for this Brewmaster pick. They thought that they constrained Dendi enough that he wouldn't be able to get a hero that would be very well fitting into the Navi's composition, but it seems like Brewmaster actually does fit in quite well. And so TL is sort of taken for a loop by this. They've dug into basically all their reserve time trying to figure out the correct way to respond to him with their own mid, because like I said, the mid choices have become extremely constrained by the bans that these two teams threw out. So they end up going with Beastmaster. This is definitely a fine pick. He's a solid mid. We don't see him as a mid that often in the Western metagame. When we do see him here in like the Europe NA scene, he's generally run as a side lane solo on the Dire team, and they may still do that. You do have the option of running a dual mid with Lifestealer and a support, so that's something that they could still do. But Beastmaster mid is perfectly competent as well, especially against another melee hero like Brewmaster. He should be okay. The Brewmaster has the advantage that he can Thunderclap consistently and Drunken Haze him, but the Beastmaster has tools as well, especially in the form of the Wild Axes. And Na'Vi picks up a Disruptor for their final hero, so they needed one more support, and they do pick up this Disruptor. This is a very strong option. Like I said in a game that we watched earlier today, or yesterday? Either today or yesterday. He has a very unique toolkit. He's able to do area denial and AoE silence that's very strong. It's actually very strong as Brewmaster, so if Na'Vi hadn't picked him up, he was actually an option for TL. So another possible pick deny here with the Disruptor and the PL, where Na'Vi picks heroes that TL might want, so that TL can't have them. And TL, because they dug into their reserve time so deeply for the Beastmaster, they actually don't have very much time to decide how they want to... They end up going with Weaver. So what we are going to see is this will be a Beastmaster in the middle lane. The reason I know this is because Weaver is pretty weak mid, although they could try, but I don't think it would be a very strong mid option. The more likely option is that they're going to run Weaver as the side lane solo, and we've seen TC do Weaver side lane solo on the stream before. They're going to run the Beastmaster in the middle. They're going to run a Shadow Demon, and they're going to run a Lifestealer, Keeper of the Light, Shadow Demon tri-lane, which is very strong tri-lane, very scary to go up against, and most likely I think they'll do that in a safe lane. Meanwhile, on Na'Vi, we've got the Beastmaster as the mid, the Phantom Lancer as the safe lane farmer, and probably the Lone Druid as a side lane solo. And then with Disruptor and Wisp acting as supports, the only question for Na'Vi's lanes is really whether Disruptor and Wisp act as a tri-lane support, or whether we'll have a dual with Wisp supporting one of the heroes, probably the Brewmaster in the middle, and Disruptor supporting the Phantom Lancer in the bottom. Both are pretty strong options. We'll sort of see what they go with. And we'll also see if a team decides to be unusual and go with an aggressive tri-lane. I think if any team does, it should be Liquid. This Lifestealer, Shadow Demon, Keeper of the Light is fundamentally a stronger tri-lane in terms of oppressing the opposing team than Disruptor, Phantom Lancer, Wisp. At low levels, Wisp and Disruptor really don't contribute that much to a fight, so it's possible that early engagements will just be very, very brutal and Liquid be able to muscle them out. So we're going to get started, and let me talk about some of the heroes that we don't see that often. So we sort of know about some of these heroes, but maybe we don't know about Weaver because we haven't really talked about him that much. So Weaver is a hero that wasn't very popular, and I think maybe he was a little bit underrated, and now he's sort of seeing a little more attention. He got a minor buff, the Shukuchi, which is his primary ability, and his W, got a buff that made it deal more damage, but that in and of itself, I don't know that it's that. Quelling Blade on PL isn't allowed. That's funny. Well, regardless, he has it. So, no, we're getting a pause, actually. I don't know what this pause is about. So let's talk about Weaver for a second. It looks like they're actually, what I said about the aggressive tri-lane is because they do have these two supports. This makes a lot of sense. Wait, what? What is actually... I don't actually know what the deal is with Quelling Blade Phantom Lancer. I guess we're going to remake the entire game because there's some sort of... I don't know, I'm not familiar with this issue, but apparently Quelling Blade on Phantom Lancer is not allowed in the Raid Call Dota 2 League tournament. So we're going to do a full repick. Okay, so we're gonna redo the entire draft. It did look like, by the way, they were gonna run Weaver as the as the safe lane solo and the aggressive tri-lane to sort of muscle out Na'Vi. Yeah, I think some players, IX Mike is as confused as I am, maybe. We're gonna do a rematch, so they're actually going to remake the entire game, and we're gonna start the entire draft over. Meanwhile, I'm going to go try to find out what the deal is with Phantom Lancer Quelling Blade, because this is something I haven't heard about. Maybe I am very, very ignorant. I don't really know very much, so I don't know what I'm missing here. But okie dokie. So I will join the game as soon as it remakes, and for now I'm going to do some research. Oh, it's right. It has to do with the illusions that Phantom Lancer generates. So it's actually not for the early game, it's for the late game, because the additional 32% damage that every one of your illusions can deal makes it extremely easy for Phantom Lancer to just farm. Later on in the game, it makes his farm rate extremely dramatic. So it becomes extremely difficult to actually stand up against the illusions because they deal huge damage basically everywhere. There's an argument, I suppose, that Quelling Blade on Phantom Lancer illusions was limited in some way. Like there was an additional descaling factor that caused Quelling Blade to deal less damage when used on illusions versus on actual heroes. And apparently, what the heck is going on the actual Dota screen? I'm sorry, I don't know what the deal is. Or maybe restart Dota. There's an argument that possibly in Dota 2, Quelling Blade does more damage on Phantom Lancer illusions than it previously did, which makes it much, much easier to farm on him, and maybe lifts his power level to a state that some tournament organizers think is unacceptable. But I mean, I don't know, I feel like it can be dealt with in the ban phase, but maybe not.
Reserve time.
So at any rate, I think because I don't actually know. I haven't seen the calculations yet or proof that he actually does do a non-Dota 1 parity amount of damage on Quelling Blade on illusions, but it's certainly possible. I mean, you get bugs like that sometimes, and if true, I can sort of see why a tournament might do a house rule that prevents that particular item from being built on that particular hero. Of course, the flip side is then he has a disadvantage in the sense that he's not able to do that additional damage to creeps early, but regardless, an interesting sort of little fill-up in the rules there, and I'm not sure what the actual upshot of that is going to be, whether Valve will change the behavior of Quelling Blade on the hero, or whether that turns out to have just been a misunderstanding, or whether he'll just become more and more popular until he's ubiquitous in the metagame because of his strength. So, as a result, we're going to do the draft over again. I suspect Liquid is just going to ban Nyx Assassin and Batrider again. Navi actually decides not to ban... What did they ban last time? Darkseer? So they instead this time they actually banned the Lone Druid. So they clearly had a strategy that combined the PL with the Lone Druid. I think because the Lone Druid already starts putting a lot of pressure in the early mid-game in terms of pushing, and then transitioning into a later, stronger push from the Phantom Lancer. So now that they can't do that particular strategy, I think they've decided to sort of pivot and not have the Lone Druid at all, and consequently they don't want Team Liquid to have the Lone Druid either. So instead of banning what they banned last time, they actually banned out the Lone Druid. And TL, meanwhile, is going to, I assume, probably ban the Batrider again, because they really don't want to give that Batrider. There was an interesting not statistical, but a frequency study of the picks and bans in the G League, and actually what those picks and bans worked out to. And a lot of the most banned heroes, you know, your Nyx Assassins of the world, your Keeper of the Lights, stuff like that, Magnus, they did well. And they were generally, with the exception of Undying, when they weren't banned, they were picked. Undying had the weird situation where it was almost always banned, but when he wasn't banned, he wasn't always picked either. So Liquid actually takes that Wisp. They don't want to see that Wisp. They took a lot of time to sort of decide whether they wanted to ban the Wisp or the Batrider. That was sort of the dilemma there. And so they decided to go with the Wisp, which gives Dundee Batrider. I'm not sure I agree with this decision, just because... Let's talk about the G League thing for a second. So, generally, these heroes got banned a ton, and then when they got through, they had a little better than average win rates. So, you know, in the higher than 50% almost always, but in that sort of 60%-ish range. Batrider was the only case where he was banned a lot, and almost every time he got through, his win rate was extremely high when he actually got through. So out of all the heroes that typically get first banned, Batrider is the one where the first ban is the most justified, I feel. Because when he gets through, he does simply dominate games in terms of how often he actually wins. So Na'Vi does pick up the Batrider, and in response, TL picks up the same sort of core that they went with last time. So they pick up this Lifestealer, one of the strongest carries currently available, very, very popular. And they can pick up the Keeper of the Light as well to give that support. Makes a good case for being one of the strongest supports along with this Nyx Assassin. And additionally, when you ban out the Nyx Assassin, you take out one of the biggest counters to the Keeper of the Light. So Na'Vi, meanwhile, since they banned out the Lone Druid, this means that the Darkseer was freed up for them to pick up, so now they pick up this Darkseer, and they'll probably pick up another hero on top of that as well. So they basically immediately pick up the Darkseer, and now they're sort of deciding what they want for their third hero. So a strong teamfight core already. This is going to be Light of Heaven on this Darkseer playing the side lane solo, and Dendi in the middle playing on this Batrider. Batrider, very, very strong hero. Dendi is very good on him. You'll see him pick up the Blink as soon as possible for that additional mobility. Dendi loves Blink on his heroes. He builds it on every hero that's not Queen of Pain. Obviously, you don't build Blink Dagger on Queen of Pain. But the Batrider Blink allows him to pick up a hero with the lasso, really drag them out of position. You can actually also layer on a Force Staff on top of that for even more mobility. And they pick up the Rubik as well. So 3 heroes that Na'Vi is very good with, especially this Batrider and this Rubik, are Na'Vi specialty heroes. They're actually both Dendi specialty heroes, although I assume we're going to be seeing Dendi on the Batrider and not on the Rubik. But Rubik, also a very strong hero, is able to steal spells, do a lot of teamfight disruption. If the other team has like a big teamfight hero, like your Enigmas, your Tidehunters, your Magnuses of the world. By the way, Magnus isn't banned. Then Rubik can steal those spells and essentially counteract that hero. If you took a hero for one big spell, and the other team also gets that one big spell, it's almost like, you know, the value of that hero to you was substantially taken out. So yeah, I mentioned that Magnus wasn't banned. In this case, TL picks him up with their last pick coming into the next set of bans. Obviously, if they had not taken Magnus here, there was no way that he would survive this next ban process. So smart of TL to pick him up if he's part of their strategy. We could see Magnus in the middle. It's not a fantastic matchup against Batrider, but it's not horrendous either. You really need that early bottle so you can start bottle crowing. We've talked about bottle crowing before. It's when you use the flying courier to take your bottle back to the fountain and then bring it back to you to refill it without having to get the runes. That's really the core to Magnus as a mid hero. He would not be good mid if he wasn't able to do the bottle crowing to give him additional mana to cast Shockwave repeatedly. But they might put him in the mid. They can also do a side lane solo Magnus. We'll see what the options are. More likely than not, I think he'll actually go up in the mid. So, once again, when you see what your opponents pick up and you see what they're missing going into the second ban phase, you really want to ban the exact things that they're missing. So, if you're TL right now, you see that Na'Vi has a side lane solo, they have a support, and they have a mid. So what they're missing is another support and a carry. So they can start taking out some carries to take out Hvost's preferred heroes, and then Na'Vi will sort of have to settle for a subpar hero for Hvost. Or they could, take out support heroes. They could take out Arsart's heroes, because we'll most likely see Puppy on this Rubik. So either are options. It looks like they've gone for the Hvost route. They also could, ban out like 1 or 2 heroes for Hvost and 1 or 2 heroes for Arsart. But we'll see what they end up going with. So they take out the Luna, very strong carry hero, one of the strongest in the pool. We've sort of seen that sometimes she's not, in the game earlier today we saw that sometimes she's not able to stand up to this just onslaught of Lifestealer if he gets a very, very serious early start. But definitely a strong option nonetheless. And so, interestingly, so Na'Vi meanwhile taking out supports because they see that TL is sort of in the same boat, where, well, they do have their Lifestealer, so they actually have a carry. If they decide to go a supplemental carry, which I suspect they won't, but I don't know, maybe they would. So Navi's going to take out additional supports for them, especially these early ganky supports that are options. So they take out Chen, and they take out Shadow Demons. This actually means we won't see Navi playing Chen, one of their signature heroes, but we're likely to see Puppy on this Rubik anyway, so that's not that much of a surprise. TL, meanwhile, bans out Queen of Pain. This is interesting to me. I wonder if they think that Navi might go an unusual route with this Batrider, where they put him, for instance, in jungle. Batrider is very versatile. You can actually play him really in any lane. We don't usually see him in the tri lane just because he needs those early levels, but certainly you can put him in the jungle. You can put him on the side lane. You can put him in the middle. But nonetheless, this Queen of Pain is a very interesting ban. I'm not 100% sure about those. Anyway, Navi meanwhile takes out Shadow Demon and Chen, 2 strong support options. Shadow Demon, very, very popular support these days. He provides that extreme early gankiness, and he has a good defensive option late in the sense that his disruption makes a hero that's targeted essentially untargetable for 2.5 seconds, which saves a hero more often than not. And Navi meanwhile takes out Weaver, so it's rare that we see a Weaver ban, but Liquid has been favoring this side lane solo Weaver in some matchups that we've seen lately, so it's certainly not an unintelligent ban for them. Meanwhile, TL, I wonder if they know something I don't about the lineups Navi's been running, because I haven't actually watched that many Navi games recently, so perhaps they actually were spoofing that Dendi would be on the Batrider, and they mainly taking out mids here, so 2 mid options. The TA, the Queen of Pain, you can run TA as a carry in the side lane, but we rarely see it. And interesting, I don't know. Taking out 2 mids, even though they already have 3 heroes that can go in the mid. Meanwhile, Navi takes up Gyrocopter, so this is going to be their big carry. We're going to see Hwost on this Gyrocopter, and that's always exciting to see. He's able to deal tons of AoE damage. If you give him the development, if you give him that sort of Luna-like start early where you get additional speed for more escape, and you get the BKB, and then you just build damage. So you get him the defensiveness to actually survive in fights, and then you give him the huge damage to split up with Flat Cannon. And Gyrocopter is really a hero that you build pure damage on, because Flat Cannon will not carry over things like crits, and such. So Navi digging into their time, by the way, for that Gyrocopter pickup. I think they weren't 100% sure what they actually wanted to go with for most of this game, but now they decide to pick up the Gyrocopter. So strong choice. Like I said, we haven't seen him quite as much lately as maybe we did a few weeks ago, but still an interesting hero, still quite strong. He's able to deal extreme amount of damage if he's sort of left to develop and stay free. And now TL is going to sort of counteract that, I think, by picking up... They're most likely going to pick up their own carry and save some sort of surprise support pick for the 5th slot. But we'll see what they do as they dig in. Let's talk about Gyrocopter a bit again, because we haven't sort of reviewed what he does in a little while. He's got this Rocket Barrage. This is a very, very short-range, random hit rockets. And it deals very, very fast damage over time. So over a period of like a couple seconds, 3 seconds, it just deals tons and tons of damage in a very short area. So even though he's a ranged hero, he has pretty short attack range, and Rocket Barrage means he has to get in. So he's a hero that wants to get in the fight, even though he's sort of a fragile agility carry. Then he's got this homing missile, which will chase people around and stun them for a duration based on how long it's been chasing him. Or, and how fast it goes. And then you can actually destroy a homing missile before it reaches its target, which is interesting. Basically, better teams will be better at destroying the homing missile and preventing it from actually landing a stun. And then he's got this Flat Cannon, which we've talked about, which is just the huge AoE. It turns all of his auto attacks into a 1000 radius AoE. And the nuke is his cooldown is an additional AoE hit. And so we actually see Navi taking a pivot in there. These 3 picks are all extremely versatile, but and I'm not saying Sand King and Gyrocopter aren't versatile, but we've seen Navi sort of pigeonholing their own strategy. They have more of a focused strategy by picking up these last 2 rather than a sort of a generalist we can win any fight strategy. Now they have more of what people like to call wombo combo, in the sense that their hero abilities coincide to create situations in which they will just dramatically be victorious in a fight. But if things don't work out for them, if they aren't able to land all the phases of the wombo combo, then they're sort of in trouble because their backup plans aren't quite as strong. So, and TL actually picks up the Puck. This is quite interesting. So they actually are going to run this Puck mid most likely, and this is a pick that Navi typically favors. They didn't need to pick it to deny Navi, but I guess they think that the Puck is the ideal circumstance here. The AoE silence that the Puck provides is definitely going to be fantastic. If he can jump in and silence some of Navi's critical heroes before they can get off their combo, especially the Sand King, then it's going to really disrupt Navi's ability to combo up. So let me talk about the actual combo. Darkseer is able to vacuum people into a tight area, so the combo starts with Darkseer vacuuming, or it really starts with a single target disable from Batrider or Rubik to initiate. Then TL rushes in this sort of ideal state of the world that Navi's postulating. They all get vacuumed together by Darkseer, and then Sand King stuns them all with Burrow Strike and uses Epicenter. So Epicenter is Sand King's ultimate ability, and around Sand King, it just deals tons of damage and a strong slow. So now everybody on Liquid is sucked in, stunned, slowed, and just to top it off, Gyrocopter calls down his nuclear missile, and just the damage is enough to just blow up the entirety of Team Liquid's team. TL, meanwhile, they're looking to disrupt this by sort of doing, not the same thing, but also doing a ton of damage to Navi in terms of clumping them up. Instead of Vacuum, they have Reverse Polarity, which is on a much longer cooldown, but disables people in addition to sucking them in. So they really want to get this Magnus into place, suck everybody in with Reverse Polarity, and then deal a ton of damage on top of that with things like the Keeper of the Light Illuminate and with the Lifestealer. Lifestealer Magnus is a strong combo. We saw Empire do very, very well with it earlier today, and the reason is Lifestealer already does so much damage, and Magnus provides a captive audience for him to deal damage to in the form of this reverse polarity, and additionally, this Empower gives Lifestealer cleave on his attack. So if Lifestealer is hitting for 50% harder, and his attacks cleave, and everything he hits gives him a huge amount of HP back from this feast, he becomes extremely difficult to kill, and he does just incredible damage. So you don't even need a magic combo. You can just get people in with reverse polarity, which goes through BKB. Which goes through magic immunity, such as what's provided by the BKB Black King Bar item, and just cleave them down with Lifestealer. That's an enormous amount of damage. And I think the Puck fits into this pretty well, because the nice thing about the Puck is the Dream Coil sort of also ensures that people stay in a fairly confined radius, because if they come out of it, they get stunned for a fairly long period of time. Usually you do see people breaking it just because the pain of getting stunned is less than the pain of having to stay in the same place. So, but at any rate, Dream Coil does provide some sort of area condensing situation for the heroes that it hits, which sets up the Magnus and the Magnus Ultimate. So really what they're going for, what Liquid's game plan here is definitely to get Lifestealer to the mid game without having died very much and with a ton of farm. Because the Vengeful Spirit, which we didn't actually talk about yet, is going to have this Vengeance Aura to give 36% more damage. And that and the Magnus Empower, both on Lifestealer, will just cause him to deal incredible amounts of damage if he gets through. If he's actually able to get enough farm to actually become terrifying even without those things in their own right. Once he's there, he will he might just blow up teamfights completely, like just by himself, just destroy Navi's lineup. And the fact that he has passive magic immunity will make it very difficult for Navi to do tricky things like Darkseer Vacuum him, like use Rubik's Stun, like use Sand King's abilities. But at any rate, so Navi is actually, let's look at the lanes for a second. Navi is running Batrider, Dendion Batrider in the middle, which is really what I thought would happen, which is why I was surprised that TL was banning so many mid-heroes. But Dendion Batrider in the middle, we've got Darkseer actually jungling. We probably see Light of Heaven go to the top lane, but the Risen is not there now as he wants to level up enough to actually get a decent rank of Ion Shell and a rank of Surge. If you come to the lane, a difficult to live through tri-lane, like anything containing a Keeper of the Light, at level 1 as Darkseer, you really have to make a Hobson's choice between your whether you take Ion Shell so you can actually get some kills, get some creep kills in the lane and actually gets a little bit of farm, or Surge to actually survive. I missed First Blood, that's completely my fault, my bad. So they're actually running Magnus in the side lane solo. That's my fault, I was talking too much, so I missed it. The side lane solo Magnus is not quite as effective as he once was because the range on his skill. And another kill in the middle for Navi. I really need to like wake up and start paying attention. That's completely my fault. That's very rough start for Liquid. The downside of starting this Magnus in the sideline solo these days is that the skewer range at level 1 is actually not that far. There was a time in which it was extremely far, and now it's just not nearly as effective. So this Magnus is going to have a pretty tough time actually surviving in these situations, and so he does actually manage to pick up a DD rune there, and you can see him juking this way. This was because if he had walked sort of this way, even though it's the shortest path, Rubik could telekinesis him and put him on here, which would be very difficult for him. He doesn't even have the money for a teleport scroll right now. So tough situation for Magnus. It's going to be tough for him to survive in this solo lane just because of the amount of disable that Navi has in the form of the Rubik and the form of the Sand King, and the fact that he can't actually escape that far away with his skewer. Puck, meanwhile, I'm not actually sure how he died in the middle. He does have his early magic wand. This is very smart. If you're playing against a Batrider, you always want your magic wand as soon as possible, because Batrider's toolkit is primarily to spam sticky napalm constantly in the middle lane. So if you're Puck, if you're going up against this Batrider, 5 stacks on him actually, so he's in trouble once again. He just uses his escape ability, but he's taking a ton of damage. 6 stacks of napalm is just so much. It causes everything to deal so much damage to you. Every stack of napalm increases the amount of damage you take by 15 or so. So at rank 2, it increases by 15. So 7 stacks means that every single one of Batrider's auto attacks deal 105 more damage to you. So even though this magic wand is really good, it gives you a ton of, it gives you 15 health and mana back for every charge that you have of it. If you have 7 napalm stacks on you, those charges of Magic Stick aren't actually going to help you really live that much more. So, for now, actually Navi has not sent Light of Heaven back up, so he's still leveling constantly in the jungle. You can play Darkseer as a jungle hero, which is sort of what Light of Heaven is doing now. It's not as ideal for getting levels as maybe a solo side lane position would be, but he feels that he can actually survive in the solo side lane, so it'll definitely be better for him to get the jungle. So we can see Navi running the 0-0 off lane setup here. Once again, Dendi harassing Korok in the middle quite a bit. Korok's actually okay. I think this stacks of napalm will wear off again. But again, he's getting zoned out very, very effectively by this Batrider. And this is really the terrifying thing about letting another team out a Batrider, is that he just wins against so many heroes in the middle. It's so difficult to actually defeat him. And 20 last hits to Korok's 6 is just an incredible advantage this early on. And he picks up the regeneration rune as well. He's got his bottle finished. Korok is still sort of suffering through. He doesn't even have his bottle, so... similar build-outs for them, but just Dendi way ahead because of those additional 15 last hits that he has on him. The advantage is that because there was no opposition at all in this side lane, TC has had a great start. He has 34 last hits, 14 denies. Obviously, he's not really denying anybody anything, but he is keeping the lane stable. Light of Heaven is now level 5, I think, so he feels like he's okay. Yeah, now that Light of Heaven is level 5, he's got the level 2 Surge, so he has 4.5 seconds of haste. He's got the Ion Shell at level 3, so he's got a ton of damage that he can bring out. Now he feels safe that he can actually go up to this top lane and contest this situation. Meanwhile, Bulba on the Magnus is still having a really, really, really hard time. He has no last hits, and he's level 2 and barely 2 at that. He is stacking these jungle camps, so this will help out their game plan in the long term. Korok, meanwhile, he's going to go down. He gets 8 stacks of napalm. Again, if you just get napalm stacked up on you, there's so very little you could do. Bulba gets here, but just a little too late to actually intercede on Korok's behalf and take out Dendi. I think if Bulba had been there a little bit earlier, maybe they could have made something happen. But nonetheless, Dendi's still quite safe. He's not really in any danger from Bulba. He actually, great dodge on that skewer to not take that damage, but... this is a tough lane for Liquid already. Puck is underdeveloped. He's level... What is Puck's level? He is level 5 to Dendi's 7. So Dendi's going to become an increasing problem for Liquid to actually deal with. And the other problem is that this Magnus, who's one of their core heroes where they really want to hit level 6 to get that reverse polarity, is going to be tremendously underdeveloped basically throughout the game at this point. They really, really want Magnus to have those Empower stacks, to have that reverse polarity, to really make this aura lifestealer strategy pay off. And so I'm not sure that... I'm just not tremendously confident that not putting Magnus mid, where he would do a little better at against Batrider than where he's actually doing now, was smart. And the Puck pick is interesting, and it's definitely clever, but I just don't know how much it's going to actually pay off for them. Did they actually get a bottle for Puck? I guess he doesn't. No, he doesn't. He still doesn't have a bottle. Oh, great Sentry Ward placement. And Korok's going to get disabled. They still have the Rubik Lift. Actually, Korok, really great blink, really safe play there. But Dendi is chasing him. He's still going to chase him. He's probably going to take him down. One last hit was enough to actually take him down. So Puck goes to 3 deaths. Dendi goes to 3 kills. Great setup by Arsart, planting that Sentry Ward, making so that Puck's invisibility rune didn't actually save him because they could see him right through it. And a huge disable gets Dendi a 3-level advantage over Puck in the middle. Liquid has to continually rotate people to the middle to help out Puck, and it's causing them no end of trouble. Puppy actually coming over here to harass IX Mike a bit. If we get a stun, this might actually be a kill just in terms of Dendi coming in. Dendi is in, IX Mike taking a lot of damage. Huge Flame Break placement by Dendi to deal the rest of the damage, and we're up to 4 kills in this Batrider. This is going to become a compounding problem. He has his boots, he's halfway to his blink. Dendi is going to become just a bigger and bigger issue, and you can see, Liquid realized this. They're rotating more and more people consistently into mid to try to deal with Dendi, but so far it has not been successful for them. Meanwhile, Magnus is being continually targeted as well. He's level 3, he has the 2 ranks of Shockwave and the 1 rank of Skewer, but he's going to eat this stun. He is back beyond the tier 2 tower, so he's quite safe, but at this point, if he was ever able to contest the lane, he's definitely not able to do it now. We've got this level 5 Sand King. Interestingly, check out the Sand King build from Puppy. He's actually gone just stats and Q. This is the ultimate single-minded Sand King where all he does is stun. And he had one of Sand King's problems is that he's a very low mana pool. So getting stats gives you the maximum mana pool increase possible. What it doesn't give you, huge one on Host. Host was a little out of position there. Liquid sends 4 players over. They do pick him off. So in terms of the battle of the carries, TC is definitely doing better than Faust is, just because he got that early Midas again, the very, very greedy build where you... Sorry, where is TC? He got that early Midas, so that develops you very quickly. He has this phase boost to be able to chase better. That's very, very strong compared to a Gyrocopter who really just has phase boots. He's building, I think, Helm of the Dom for AoE lifesteal. For that flat cannon lifesteal early on. To keep him alive and to sort of contest this lifestealer, but certainly he is behind in development. So in terms of last, we got 63 to 56, and some of those, and we've also got the Midas money that's coming in. So TC definitely gearing up for that late game with the huge damage with the auras. But to get those auras, they have to develop these supports more. They have to get this Vengeful Spirit to a higher level than 5, which is actually 5 is okay for this amount of time on your support. But this Magnus is a much bigger issue. So Magnus really can't get Empower early because he needs those ranks of Skewer to get that farther distance, and he needs those Shockwave to actually actually get farm, and he obviously needs reverse polarity. Fluff and Stuff, meanwhile, gets picked off. Navi wandering through the jungle. Puppy and Arsard, huge team. We've got these extra stuns the Puppies... Oh, he actually... What? Oh, I was wrong. Puppy actually had spare skill points. That's a bad call on my part. Puppy actually had spare skills points that he wasn't spending because he wasn't sure whether he wanted to do Caustic Finale for just a little bit of additional pushing and damage potential, or if he wanted to pick up Sandstorm, and he ends up picking 2 ranks in Sandstorm. So it's actually a pretty typical Sand King build, the 3 ranks of Stun and 2 ranks of Burrow Strike at level 5, but it's interesting that he chose not to train those. He actually... The way that worked was he had a point unspent all the way from level 3 up to level 5 because he was 3... You can't train the 3rd rank of Burrow Strike until level 5, so he actually was purposefully not spending his points because he wasn't actually sure how he wanted to allocate them until he was finally sure, like, yeah, Sandstorm's fine. Liquid, meanwhile, still trying to deal with Dendi in the middle. I think they realize that their main problem throughout this game is probably going to be in the form of Dendi, and Force will sort of be an issue later, so they need to deal with them now. They sort of have 2 to 3 dedicated players in the middle just trying to prevent Dendi from farming more and getting more set up. But meanwhile, Light of Heaven is actually sort of starting to counteract the top lane, and that's because they sort of rotated so many people out of here that it then gives Light of Heaven a lot of room to develop in this area. And you can see that he's actually basically done with his mechanism. You see that he's made the headdress, he's made the chainmail for the buckler, and that's going to be his mechanism quite soon. TC gets picked up by the Batrider Lasso. This is a pretty long duration disable. They'll get quite a few stacks up on him. Dendi running away now. He's on the run from TC. Pretty fast, so TC might not actually be able to chase him down. Almost certainly not. Huge stun from Puppy. This turns it right around, and Navi's feeling a lot more confident now. Liquid turned it right around the Puppy. He's stealthed. They are able to take him down just with the... They actually use the Lifestealer AoE de-infest to deal the rest of the damage onto Puppy there. So he was stealthed, and they had already thrown out some of their AoE abilities. Like they threw out the Puck Illusory Orb. They actually catch Dendi out. Dendi eats the stun from the Puck Orb. Great Flame Break once again to stop people from chasing him. Korok jumps right back on Dendi, but he's probably going to escape. He's a little too beefy right now for them to actually deal with him. And he has his Blink Dagger as well, so this is actually quite dangerous. Yeah, he's going to Firefly right up. He's probably going to blink on top of somebody and try to carry them away. I think he decides not to. Great pickup from Rubik. They actually are still chasing Korok. I think they're still deciding whether they actually want to do this. Sorry, did he use Lasso? Did he have Lasso not off? I don't really get that. I don't get what happened there with Lasso. Oh, it's just still on cooldown. But Liquid gets trapped in this very tight space here with Light of Heaven doing a ton of damage from his... Oh, Puppy. Puppy's Epicenter is going to do no damage at all, unfortunately. But they do pick up 2 heroes from Liquid already, and TC is going to get taken down by this clump here. Huge kill for Light of Heaven there. He gets all of the development back that he might have lost by jungling early. They're going to smoke on top of IX Mike here. They probably can't get him. The Rubik stun doesn't quite come up in time, and neither does the Vac. But huge plays by Light of Heaven there. The double... Ion Shell is deceptive because it really does do an incredible amount of damage when you have 2 Ion Shells dealing damage to someone. It's 90 damage over time, and you've got 2 of them, so it's really like 180 DPS, which for this early in the game is just an incredible amount of damage. And so, in addition to all of your other damage, you also have this huge damage over time source. So in cramped quarters, like right here in this river dire jungle crossover area, you can just deal so much damage with those Ion Shells that it makes it very, very difficult for the opposing team to actually come out of that team fight with an advantage. So Liquid are still trying to get chases where they can. Really great long distance kill with the Vengeful Spirit W there. It sometimes feels as though the W on Vengeful Spirit does barely any damage. That's because it really does. It does 30 damage and then 90 at max rank. But it's HP removal, so it's not removed by anything like... It's not reduced by anything like magic resistance or armor. It's not reduced by anything. It just always takes out 30 health. And, you know, it has extremely long range. So in that case, she was able to pick off that... I don't remember who she actually picked off. Rubik. From a very, very long distance when they might not have been able to chase him down otherwise. So great kill from Liquid there, but again, they're down 9-3. It's quite difficult for them to actually withstand the pressure from Navi to the point that the Lifestealer will be all that effective. So that's going to be difficult for him. And actually, the Lifestealer is starting to get it. Well, no, he just bought something. He bought his Armlet. I think it's on the Courier. So Armlet, very critical item for Lifestealer, coming out on the Courier, very useful. He will be the top net worth hero. But the problem for Navi is, the problem for Liquid is, after Lifestealer, it's the entirety of the Navi squad before any other heroes on Liquid. And in terms of levels, they're also very, very underdeveloped. Lifestealer is only matching the level progression of the top 3 heroes on Navi, and then a lot of their heroes are still very, very behind. Now, they are close to the reverse polarity on Magnus, and that is going to change the name of the game in some ways. Once this Magnus gets a couple more creep kills and he's actually able to get that reverse polarity, that'll be critical for them. But again, the problem is that he's going to keep getting outmaneuvered because Dendi, has this high-quality Tranquil Boots that gives you a lot of speed and a lot of defense, and he's got the Blink Dagger for all that mobility. Magnus doesn't even have tier 2 boots of any sort. He's still sitting on boots of speed, so it's difficult for him to get in and actually get that reverse polarity, especially because he only has the rank 2 Skewer as well, which only travels 800 units of distance. So Liquid are going to have pitch-perfect coordination to actually make sure that they get the combo that they want to get this early in the game. And Na'Vi, meanwhile, can sort of just... it's much more loose for them because they have this blink on the Rubik, on the Bat Rider. They have all this development on the heroes. They have their mechanism complete, where I don't think... Does Liquid have their mechanism? Let's take a look. They would be most likely to build it on the Keeper of the Light. Yeah, they haven't... Liquid has not even started their mechanism, and Na'Vi has theirs complete, and that's an incredible teamfight advantage. I mean, the implication of having a mechanism when the other team doesn't is just huge, because A, you get this 250 HP regain for all of your heroes. So that's basically 1250 more HP that the other team has to chew through to actually beat your team in a team fight. It gives armor. It gives the hero that actually has it attributes in armor. It's just incredibly, incredibly strong. And it gives an AoE, I forgot, it gives an AoE HP regen aura as well. Having a mech substantially before the other team it's incredibly good, and Na'Vi was able to do that because they got this Darkseer, just had great development. He has 3 kills. He got that triple kill in this sort of fight in the river area, and he didn't die at any point. He didn't enter the solo lane until he was sure that he was actually safe and not going to die in it. And so just incredible play from Light of Heaven here as usual. A very experienced player, great veteran, one of the strongest players consistently in the European scene. And consequently, Na'Vi just leaped to an incredible lead. It's probably going to be, actually, it's probably going to be even more than we think it is. It's probably in the 10k range. Yeah, in the 10k range. And that's because they have these 3 towers. Liquid hasn't taken down any of Na'Vi's towers. They got this additional map control, so their safe farming area is already substantially ahead of Liquid's. They have great development on multiple heroes. They've got very few deaths, so if your heroes... One of the things you notice when you play Dota is that if you never die, the gold you get is just so much... Actually, we're going to start with a disable. We've got a huge last one, Korok. Gyrocopter's double nuke actually hits this Vengeful Spirit, so she gets hitting her very, very quickly. Big stun. We've got the vacuum. We've got the combo that we were talking about, and all 5 of Liquid's heroes go down. Na'Vi gets the full combo. Rubik was able to seal Rage, so it was immune through all of that combo to deal additional damage with his Telekinesis and Fade Bolt. We had the vacuum. We had the stun from Puppey. He didn't actually even need his Epicenter, so that the damage wasn't even necessary. Just with the damage, the AoE going after the Gyrocopter, the Sand King stun and Darkseer was enough to actually just destroy Liquid. And so the additional levels that Na'Vi have on them, it's just very, very substantial. And we didn't even get a Magnus reverse polarity in that. He died just simply too fast. And so Liquid are in dire straits, I think, in this game 1. It's going to be almost impossible for them to come back because their plan relied... It was always gonna be tough to live very long against a team that's as aggressive and as strong as Na'Vi. But Liquid didn't do themselves any favors by they picked a hero and they picked a game plan where only did the Lifestealer have to get great farm. It actually was not enough for the Lifestealer to get great farm, and he did actually farm very, very well. He's got 459 gold per minute, but it wasn't enough. They actually also needed their Vengeful Spirit and their Magnus to get the levels and get them in a timely fashion for this Lifestealer to actually be able to dominate Na'Vi's composition. And consequently, as long as any one of those factors didn't end up happening, Liquid would be facing a very, very difficult plan ahead of them. And instead, sort of an unexpected thing happened to them too, which is that Dendi just dominated middle by such an extent that actually couldn't give Lifestealer all the support that maybe he wanted. In addition to sort of maybe a more expected thing happening, which is that Boba had a very, very difficult time in the solo lane. So one of the things that they needed to happen didn't happen. Oh, Fluff Stuff's going to get picked up by this combination of Dendi and Puppey again. Na'Vi at this point are so mobile. They have such a mobility advantage and a map control advantage and vision. Like they have this. After this getting this tower, they put a ward here, so they have the control of the entirety of Liquid's jungle, essentially. It's going to be very difficult for Liquid to actually be safe in their own jungle. And they have a ward here, so they actually have effective map control of like this area too, and they can contest this area right here. So this triangle where Fluff and Stuff died, this is an area where Bat Rider is able to very easily jump in, and whoever's here, you can just sort of take them out in the combination with heroes like the Sand King. So Na'Vi are just really putting together a dominant performance here in all respects. But really, on Liquid's part, like, they needed the Magnus to get levels, they needed the Vengeful Spirit to get a decent amount of levels, and they needed the Lifestealer to farm. The Lifestealer farmed, the Vengeful Spirit got okay levels, but although they've been completely stymied since then. But the Vengeful Spirit was level 5 about 12 minutes ago, and now she's level 6. At any rate, the Vengeful Spirit got okay levels early on, but the Magnus didn't. And so their entire plan was just sort of picked apart at the seams there. Liquid is doing a very clever pincer motion where they smoke, they go beyond Na'Vi, and then they try to go back behind Na'Vi. Unfortunately, Puppey ruins this by running right into them. And the Gyrocopter nuke's coming down. It actually doesn't hit on anybody. Liquid is teaming up against Arsart. They managed to take off the Rubik, but the BKB on the Gyrocopter is going to cause them to take huge damage from the Splat Cannon. And Dendy's in. He's disrupting their entire team. Puppey picks up a double just by stunning right in and doing his damage, doing his epicenter to just deal tons and tons and tons of damage to Liquid. And this puck just isn't quite developed enough to do much either. He didn't even put off his Dream Coil there. He does survive, but Dendy jumps right in, right on top of him. Dendy has an unstoppable streak. He's 6-0. He's not even, because he picked up the Ghost Scepter to counteract the Lifestealer, he doesn't even take damage from the tower on his way back out. They pick up the Lifestealer, and that's going to be a good game call from Team Liquid. Lifestealer actually, I think he's moving towards the Desolator, so that more of an early game build, but not nearly enough. Being down 19-4 at 19 minutes, losing 5 towers to 0. Just a very, very, very dominant performance from Na'Vi right out of the gate. They pick up the Shadow Blade for Hubos. I didn't actually notice they built Shadow Blade, but that's a funny item. Much more of an early game, just destruction, and get very, very quick into the fights game. And so Na'Vi's superior mobility and just the complete dominance of Batrider in the middle lane there are the stories of that game. And I don't know, I felt like Liquid's draft was a little bit unmoored. Like, I raised certain issues right at the beginning, and I think they continued being. I think those sort of percolated downwards. They weren't able to do as many bans at targeted heroes on Navi's pool as maybe they wanted to, just because they spent time banning mid heroes, and Navi ended up just... In some respects, you could say they got too clever for their own good, right? They were like, oh, Navi's going to be clever, and they're not going to run the Batrider mid, so we'll ban the heroes the mid that they're really going to run. And then Navi was just like, wait, like, you guys do realize that Batrider is the best mid, right? Like, we can just run Batrider mid, and it's not a problem. So, as a consequence, TL sort of outthinks themselves, I feel like, and the Batrider ends up completely dominating mid, causing TL to scramble to figure out a plan to deal with that, as their own actual game plan gets picked apart by Na'Vi at all turns with their superior mobility. I just mentioned the mobility a lot, but it really is substantial. This Gyrocopter is quite fast, especially after he picks up the Shadow Blade, but even with just the phase boots. The Darkseer makes your entire team fast. The Batrider, if he gets a timely blink, is just incredible in terms of how he can disrupt your game plan. And so Liquid their plan never gets off the ground at all. They get great development on TC, but not nearly enough development to actually get him to the point where he could contest Na'Vi in a meaningful way. And so we're going to go into Game 2, and we'll see how sort of Liquid sort of reacts from this. I think with some tightening up of the draft and a game plan that doesn't run into Navi's strengths so often. Like, if your game plan relies on you winning all 3 lanes against Na'Vi, a team that is very strong, like, it's almost no team is actually able to win 3 lanes against Na'Vi. In the International 2, we had the best teams in the world, the Chinese teams, LGD and IG, playing against Na'Vi. And I don't think there was a single game in which Na'Vi, it could be said that they completely lost all 3 lanes. If anything, they would always at least win mid, or at least get a tie in mid, much less the other lanes. So if your game plan revolves around the Magnus not losing his lane because he needs levels, you winning the safe lane, which, I mean, fine, they did. Darkseer wasn't even there to contest it. And winning the middle so that Dendy doesn't get the development of the Batrider. You're setting yourself just a challenge. You're setting yourself a hurdle to jump that's just really quite remarkable. And I think it was maybe a little too much that they wanted to do with that game. But we'll see what they do in the second game. We'll see sort of how they react to that and what they actually do to balance out the effect that Na'Vi had on them in this past game. Actually, I don't know why I'm not seeing any live games here. This is weird. Defense is working. But this is... Okay, so now we have yeah. They'll probably start at the second game soon. So, smart play from Na'Vi there. They did go for that wombo combo build with the multiple layering magic effects. And I think a team could have targeted that and tried to pick it apart by taking down their supports. But instead, because of the dominance of Dendy in the middle with his Batrider, they never had an issue with Team Liquid really like trying to pick off their supports. A, because Team Liquid needed to develop their heroes too much. B, because, you know, if you're always rotating people into a defensive middle position to deal with Batrider, you can't possibly also have a very offensive, like, ganking posture that takes down Navi's supports. So, TL just wasn't able to deny the development of any of Navi's heroes. Navi's lowest leveled hero, which is this Rubik, who is Arsart playing the hard support role, so just wards, just maybe get the arcane boots and the magic wand to give yourself a little bit more mana, setting up those stuns on the telekinesis when you can, but otherwise not even making too much of a fuss of your spell steal or anything. I noticed him spell steal rage one time, but the other times I didn't really even notice him spell stealing too much. their lowest level player, so Arzar is level 9. He's higher level than every single hero on Liquid other than Core, other than TC. So, I mean, that's a situation in which you're just... it's very, very difficult if all of your heroes are getting less farm than the other team's least farmed hero. So even if, yeah, fine, the Lifestealer is getting a lot of gold, that's really not substantial for you. And you can see they also picked up the Blink on Sandcake because the Navi were ramping up their mobility even more. One thing that was good, and I want to note, is that if you have a build and that's what you want to follow, or you even have a game plan and that's what you want to follow, you have to always be willing to sort of turn and change it based on events. So later on in the game, we actually saw TC pick up the Mithril Hammer, and we saw it in his stash. And what that means is that he was probably going Desolator. BKB is a possibility, but usually people don't go BKB on Lifestealer just because he already basically has a passive BKB just in the form of his Q, his Rage. And what that Desolator signifies is TC had acknowledged that, okay, this game isn't going to... We're not going to be able to get the levels on this Magnus and Vengeful Spirit. I won't be getting those percentage damage boosts that I was counting on to deal tons of damage later. So maybe attack speed, just building more attack speed items, actually isn't the solution for me. I should build a Desolator, which will give me the big damage now, so that I can actually take out one or two of these heroes prior to them being able to set up their entire combo. And that's really smart. That's very, very smart decision making from TC. Sort of, even if you're very, very behind, you always want to be making the decisions that maximize your chances of actually winning. And so it was smart of him to sort of make that, start making that Desolator, because if he had built it up, maybe these fights start out with you taking down one or two of Navi's heroes, and then it becomes much more difficult for them to actually launch your combo, and maybe the rest of your heroes have a chance to actually do what they want to do. All right, I'm gonna take a quick break while we wait for the second game to start. Shouldn't be too long, I think.